I want to ask the question of, is it more important that they got over 500 and that sort of mythical sort of hump, so to speak, or is it more important the teams they beat to get there?
That's John. That's an interesting question. I mean, they beat Oklahoma City, and then I was at the game last night. Portland. I was at the game last night. Sorry.
And they won in Phoenix. So.
And they won
and Golden State.
They beat Golden State. So they're beating some good teams. But I think that's definitely part of the equation. But for me, the big thing was just to see the sense of relief that these guys had. I mean, you know what? I know, like, across the country, people are probably laughing at this. They're a game over 500. Hey, but as low as this organization was, it's significant for them.
First time in John Wall's career, Dan.
Yeah, and it had been by far the longest streak of any team in the NBA of not getting above 500. I mean, so I think that it did kind of rise above a little statistical oddity, and it was 5 years is a long time. I think that it actually was more important to get over 500 because we've seen that they can lose to bad teams in the pursuit of 500, which they did a bunch of times this year. Normally, I think kind of arbitrary milestones are just arbitrary and meaningless, but I think this time it happened so many times, one after another, getting to 500, then falling back. And they were getting asked about it. I think they knew that this was a big deal. Yeah, they knew this was a big deal. So I think it is significant that they got over. And with the way the schedule sets up now, obviously I'm getting ahead of myself, but they could get a fair bit above 500 over the next couple of weeks. So I think it's kind of significant. That
Returning to Eastern Conference play, would you agree that getting over the 500 level is more important than the teams they've beaten recently to get there? All of them mostly playoff teams in the West.
I think it means more that they beat those teams in the West, if you ask me. Getting to over 500 should not be that much of a moral victory. If you're trying to be a better team, if you're trying to climb to the playoffs and become that team where you're a competitive team, 500, sure, you want to have milestones, benchmarks, but I think that you also want to be able to say, look, along the way we showed that we can beat the best of the best. And I think as a player, when you're competing and you're getting wins, you pay attention to who you're getting wins and losses against. I mean, winning against the Baltimore Ravens when they won the Super Bowl was way more impactful to me and I'm sure to my teammates than it was us beating Cleveland or someone like that.
We're dumping on Cleveland.
It's just the truth. Which funny thing is they made the playoffs before we did, and when I got drafted, and those were the two teams that was going to draft me. But I think it means a lot more to those players to win against those types of teams. If they had broke 500, okay, you hit a benchmark for breaking 500, but if you did it against teams that weren't very good or competitive, I don't think that it means very much.
And I think for the national spotlight, I think certainly the fact that they're taking out the Miami Heat, they're taking out the Thunder, they're taking out the Blazers, I think that's kind of more important nationally. And I think there was one ESPN.com power ranking today that had the Wizards 12th in the entire NBA. Wow. That's not because they're a game over 500. That's because they're beating some of the best teams in the league.
Only team in the league to have beaten the Heat, Thunder, and the Blazers by double digits this year. I mean, there's something to that, right? So let's shift the conversation.
That's Jay Reid trying to clear his throat to say something good about John Wall being in the All-Star game.
Let's shift to John Wall making the All-Star game. And guys, obviously, there's been a lot of conversation over the years on this show and other outlets as well about John Wall and his contract status and whether he's a max contract guy and the pressure on him. Is his performance this year, Jason, changing your opinion of him?
Well, it's funny with me and John because people think I think one way about John and it's not. The bottom line for me is
go ahead, explain.
John is playing much better than I ever thought he could. Mm-hmm. And he is doing things on the court right now where he's actually becoming the type of guy the Wizards have longed for so long. So I don't think my opinion has changed of him in terms of like him as necessarily a person, but in terms of him as a player, yeah, because he's doing things now. I mean, he's never going to be the greatest jump shooter in the world, but he's hitting his jumper more to where you say to yourself, well, if he can do that with his other physical tools, okay, now they've really got something. So I definitely think that he's playing at a high level, and he deserved to be put on this team.
On the All-Star team.
He deserved to be put
I want to pass my time to LeVar because I'm curious what he
let's add a minute because I want we might need more than that. Go ahead, LeVar.
I think he's playing at an All-Star level. But there's a difference between being a reserve. We call it in football an alternate. There's a difference between being a pick and being a reserve. Let's just be clear on that, because I know that's what you want to hear. And it's certainly not absurd or crazy to sit
so
there.
So you're saying the only real All-Stars are 10 players who are starting in the game?
The real All-Stars are the ones that are picked for the game, like not an alternate. When you go as an alternate, it's almost like by default. Like if I'm misunderstanding this,
you're misunderstanding this.
Did he get picked? Because
he got picked by the coaches. He didn't get voted in by the fans for a popularity contest. He got picked by the coaches to be an NBA All-Star.
But did he not? All right. See, I was under the understanding that he got picked because another player was not playing. Well, then I'm misinformed. I'm misinformed.
Let me just say that I understand what you're saying, because that in the NFL that's the way it works.
Right.
Now, but in this situation, the fans pick the starters, and then the coaches actually picks the reserve. Now there are situations where guys get hurt, and then like Kobe, like Kobe was picked as a starter, but there'll be someone takes his
place. And that's what I thought took place. So then I stand corrected.
What cynics will say is that, well, it took Rose and Rondo being hurt for John to become
Which is probably true, but it doesn't matter. That's here nor there.
His numbers are still worthy of All-Star consideration. Dan, did you have anything to add quickly on the All-Star conversation? John Wall-Star, like that nickname? All right.
He said it like he rests his case. I was misinformed.
That's fair.
I thought as a reserve,
none of us are perfect.
And I'm close. It was my understanding that he was a reserve and that he was a replacement.
So we'll give you
because an alternate in football is a guy who comes and plays because Brett Favre or Randy Moss isn't going to play
this year,
like a
for the Redskins. Right, exactly. I got you. I hear you.